Hello, hello, hello. How are you all doing? How are we? Hello, Jamie, mate. How you feeling? How have you been? I feel like it's been a little while since I've done a random little stream on a Friday out of nowhere. Just threw it on. Notification gag. Is that a thing? Yeah. Notification gag. Completely agree. Oh dear. Hello, mate. How are we doing? Congratulations on another big milestone. Thank you, Jay. I mean, Jamie couldn't have done it without you, to be honest, mate. Carrying the channel many days. How are we all doing? Are we feeling? Are we feeling good? Are we feeling strange? I just wasn't ready. I still don't feel ready. I know that we saw the first official Formula One car drop. Do we count the McLaren one? Maybe. It's a bit of a weird one. McLaren were like, we're going to do a little announcement before the official announcement. And everyone was like, okay, yeah, I guess. But no, I guess, the first official Formula One car has dropped. The biggest Formula One news that I can remember in a very long time. And I don't feel ready for the 2024 season. I really don't. Don't know what it is. Hello, lads. Hello, Doctor Stonks. Adman as well. How we doing? Goodness me. But first and foremost, I thought I would just say a little thank you. Little thank you for all of the support on the recent videos. Thank you to all of the support on the shorts, the lives, the long form videos. Everything has been popping off a little bit since around about my birthday. Well, my birthday's in November, and it's just sort of since then it's really clicked the last couple of months, and I massively appreciate it, and wanted to say thank you in some way or another, but it's so difficult to kind of find time for everything. I'm trying to make content. I obviously work full time as well, but you guys deserved it. So I was like, right, I've got a couple of hours on a Friday night. This is usually where I'd start editing some kind of video to go out over the weekend, but I thought, no, I want to check in and I want to see how we are all doing. W for Ferrari, F for Mercedes. Hello, Claire. How you doing? How are we doing? Need to get to 100k. That is the thing, right? Everyone says that the 100k is like the goal. Get a plaque. That's the one, right? We want one of those plaques just somewhere in the background. We'll have a silver play button at some point. But what do we want to start with? Should we chat Lewis Hamilton? Should we chat Haas? Does anyone want to go towards Haas? Oh, dear. It's an underwhelming start, isn't it, to the 2024 season when you start with Haas Formula One. Oh, Jamie with the membership. Thank you so much, mate. 18 months. That is ridiculous. Jamie is an OG. I reckon some of you haven't even known who I am for 18 months, let alone been a member of the channel. Thank you guys so much. Much faster than 50k than Dan with 50k. Oh yeah, Dan. I checked in with Dan. No, Dan did his yesterday, didn't he? I feel like Dan was there. Albon has reportedly been offered a 3-year contract at Red Bull Racing starting in 2025, according to Peter Windsor. That feels a little out of the box, if I'm going to be honest with you. Gotta get that silver play button. Exactly. That's the real work that we've got to go towards. Let's start with Haas, because I feel like we can talk Haas, we can get Haas out of the way fairly quickly, and then we can move on to other bigger things. Because so far this season, Haas are the only car to have dropped. Obviously, they went for it today. It was a weird announcement from Haas. I do have to say that first and foremost. I feel like, there was a lot of build-up, and it's one of those things you can never really win as a Formula One team when it comes to dropping a livery of some kind, right? Because you don't really want to give away too much of the actual car, and you can't really show it off. I feel like Ferrari did it really well a couple of years ago, where they were just like, here is the car on track. There you go. That was very, very cool. That Haas, yeah, as launches go, bit of a weird one. And obviously, Haas just doesn't feel like Haas yet without Gunther Steiner. It is going to take me a good few races, I feel, to properly remember that Gunther Steiner is no longer at Haas. He has very much been the linchpin of Haas, for me anyway. I have just always seen Haas as Gunther Steiner's team, more than Gene Haas's, even though he's the man on the side of the car. And therefore, it does feel a bit strange. I'm not expecting any big things from Haas, if I'm honest. I'm expecting another season where they're going to be running around at the back. I mean, most of the analysis from the drop, and I think Komatsu even said his like expectations for the 2024 season are still realistic, which is never a good sign. It reminds me a little bit of what Andrea Stella said about McLaren before the 2023 season, but at least with Andrea Stella, he said, you know, the upgrade will come. How good that upgrade will be, we didn't know. The upgrade came in Austria and it was phenomenal. Can I see Haas doing the same thing? Absolutely not. And I think the problem also, hello Antonio, mate, how you doing? I think the problem with Komatsu and Haas at this moment in time as well, the problem that they have is they usually start seasons pretty strong. Like they usually seem to have a really solid package coming out of the winter break, and then it just slowly drips away over the course of the season. And if they then start the season at a lower ebb than they usually do, so you got to think, you know, Kevin Magnussen in 2022 picked up the majority of points over the course of the first 3 or 4 races, and then just kind of held on to those points and was like, okay, I can just hold on to the championship position because I got those 10 points in Bahrain. And then similar with Nico Hulkenberg, Nico Hulkenberg kind of picked up a good few points over the first 4-5 races in 2023. And again, it felt like he was just sort of holding on to those points, wasn't going to able to add to those points, and was just hoping that the other drivers around them weren't able to pick up more. Unfortunately for Haas, that time around they were, and they ended up 10th in the Constructors' Championship. So when it comes to Haas, it's disappointing, and I really can't see them being anywhere other than 10th in the Constructors' Championship, because I don't think they'll start the year well. They never develop the car well over the course of the season, and even when they do upgrade the car, the other teams just have more resources, a better infrastructure, and a way of designing cars that is just much more fluent over the course of a season. Like, I back Haas to improve over the winter. I never back Haas to improve over the course of an actual Formula One season. Like, I never expect Haas to upgrade the car and it to be a significant upgrade over the course of the year. So that's Haas out of the way. Feel like we can pocket that to one side and then talk about what everyone in the chat is going on about. Although, Claire, thank you so much. Yeah, I did. I started the channel ahead of the 2021 season, believe that or not. What a banger of a season to kick off the not applicable channel, right? We had literally the season. If only I was better at making. I do look back at that and I was like, if I was as good at making videos as I am like now, back then, I feel like we could have really clicked into a gear. Like, I look at my thumbnails from a couple of years ago. I look at my thumbnails even from like 6 months ago, and I'm like, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? Could you actually put an image together? Did you know about colors? And then it's disappointing. I don't like the new livery. It's so depressing. I mean, I'm not gonna, stamp on your parade a little bit, but if you're expecting anything more from any of the other teams, it's not going to be. It's going to be a very black heavy year again for the Formula One field. I feel, the accents of white and red is all you're going to get on the Haas. You're going to get a little bit of orange on the McLaren. Ferrari are usually all right, although they have weird cutouts usually, don't they? They usually go like full red, but then they have weird black cutouts. So similar again. Most of the cars are going to have this kind of black design philosophy, mainly to save weight. A lot of these cars are still trying to save weight and get towards that minimum weight requirement, which is crazy considering we're going into the 3rd year of a regulation. and teams are still not quite sure how to figure out the best balance, and therefore saving weight on paint, as small as it may be, just means that they can, use that weight somewhere else where it'll be actually much more impactful over the course of the season. Because as much as you have a good looking car, doesn't always make it quick. Like, look at Alfa Romeo. I think Alfa Romeo have genuinely had some of the best liveries over the last few seasons, especially some of their Monza special liveries. And yet Alfa Romeo as a team have been absolutely dreadful. They have been nowhere near as quick as you would expect them to be. Haas need to partner with Andretti. Gene Haas has said the team is not up for sale, though, so unfortunately there is going to be no link up between Haas and Andretti, at least until, 2028, when the Cadillac engine is supposedly going to be added to the pool of engine. We've got a hell of a pool of engines going on, though. Like, we're almost getting to the point where every team is going to be a works team. Like, we're looking at Mercedes powered, we've got Ferrari power units, we've got Red Bull power units, Honda power units, Audi power units. Did I say Renault? We're getting to the point where we're having more and more power units. Then you add the Andretti one in, and almost every single team is going to have its own power unit. It's only going to be Red Bull and Racing Bulls that are partnered together. McLaren are still using Mercedes engines. Williams are still using Mercedes engines. And then I think that's it. I think everyone else is almost a works team in that they have their own power unit for themselves. I know Aston Martin's a bit weird because it's Honda powered, but Honda don't look like they're going to power anyone else. So it's effectively just the Aston Martin power unit. Of course, you have Ford coming in to work with Red Bull. I don't know how that will work. Will it just be like Red Bull Racing Ford powertrains? I'd imagine so. It's going to be something like that, isn't it? It's going to be... I don't know whether the Ford thing is more of a sticker exercise. A little bit like Alfa Romeo now. Like, let's face it, Alfa Romeo was just Sauber for the last few years, which is why people are like, oh, maybe now Alfa Romeo is gone, Sauber are going to step up. It's like, no. It was effectively a Sauber team. It's just Alfa Romeo paid... I think it was like 25, 30 million a year to Sauber to put the Alfa Romeo name on it. That's it. Alfa Romeo literally had no input in terms of facilities, factory, etc., etc. It was just literally a marketing exercise. So I don't know how Ford is going to be. I feel like Ford will be a little bit more hands-on, though. You'd hope they'd be a little bit more hands-on, considering how big of a brand they are in the kind of ecosystem of cars and motorsport. You'd hope that Ford are going to be a little bit more hands-on, and it's not just like they're paying Red Bull X amount a year to put a Ford badge on the side of the car for a little while. You'd hope they'd put a little bit more in. Don't know if I'm correct, but I think the Ferrari and Sainz in particular will do much better in 2024. Sainz has nothing to lose anymore. Greece from Greece. I think that is a great point. Shall we talk Lewis Hamilton? In fact, I think I have the slides that I used for my Hamilton video yesterday, and we can use those again. Why not use those? Every race since 2018. Oh, that is great. 2018 was a good year to get into Formula One, I feel, because then you kind of had 2018 to settle yourself in. Then 2019, you had Lando join, Russell join, Albon join, and it was like, ooh, this is... 2018 as well, you had an initial Charles Leclerc season. You've nailed that. You've nailed that. You had Charles Leclerc, you still got to see a little bit of Sebastian Vettel, you got to see Daniel Ricciardo at Renault, then McLaren, and 2018 was a good time to get into Formula One. Hey, do I think Mick or Albon to Merck and Sainz to Aston Martin, Perez to Williams, what would make sense? Well, I had a video planned for Sunday that I was partway through editing, believe it or not, predicting the 2025 driver lineups, as everybody does at this time of year. And actually, I thought I'd been quite conservative. Like, I've seen a couple of people that went a little bit early with their predictions. I watched Tomo's video on it, watched a couple of other people's videos on it, and I was like, I think I've reined it in a little bit. I've been quite conservative with my picks. Now Lewis Hamilton has just thrown a spanner in the works. So all their videos are redundant. The video that I've also recorded and was halfway through editing is now redundant. And therefore, I've been trying to rejig the Formula One grid, and it is so much harder now that Lewis Hamilton has moved from Mercedes. It really, really is. But actually, let's have a. Ooh, what have I clicked? I've clicked the wrong button. Oh dear, where have I gone? This one? Yeah. Apologies, clicked the wrong button at some point there. Every race since 1997. Do I break the news to you that I was born then? Born very close to then. What are your thoughts on the new Lego F1 sets that have been revealed? I haven't even seen them, Claire. I've got this one. And actually, I've added to the collection a touch. I got these for Christmas. This is like the McLaren like IndyCar. I want to say it's like Triple Crown kind of thing going on. It's very nice. And then a little just McLaren road car by the looks of things. I can't remember what they said they were. But you know I do love a Lego. You know I love a Lego. So I will definitely have a little look at the new Lego that we've got. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton signing to Ferrari. Russell and Mick to Mercedes for 2025. Sainz to Stake. I think Albon to Merck. Sainz to Sauber, Audi. Antonelli to Williams. Oof. I think the rumours surrounding Cadillac joking F1. I mean, it's a little bit annoying. Let's see then. Right. So we know the deal has been agreed. Let's talk at it. Let's talk at this first and foremost from Lewis Hamilton's perspective, right? Because he's been part of Mercedes for a very long time. Why do you? I've got my opinion, but why do you think Lewis Hamilton has decided now is the time to go? First and foremost, and secondly, now is the time to announce that he is going. Because remember, he's still got another full season with Mercedes. And it feels like it's very early. I know that Mercedes have swapped their concept for the third time in 3 years. And you can understand that he's starting to get a little bit frustrated. He's had 2 seasons now where he hasn't won a Grand Prix. That's never been the case in his career. He's never gone a season without winning a race, let alone 2 in a row since he joined the grid. And yet, now is the time when Mercedes, for the first time in a long time, although I say this, last year they were talking up their car a little bit because they thought, they'd put it in the right direction. But why do you think it is now that Lewis Hamilton has decided to go? I know he has said it's because he wants a new challenge, or at least Toto Wolff has said that Lewis Hamilton wants a new challenge, wants to do something different, and sees Ferrari as kind of that culmination of his career. And you think about it, that's a hell of a CV for Lewis Hamilton to have. He's driven for McLaren. He won races there, won a championship there. He then switched over to Mercedes. People said it was a mistake. He went and won 6 world championships with them, 8 constructors championships. And then, he has kind of culminated the most successful driver in Formula One history. He's got the most wins, the most pole positions, the most championships, equal with Michael Schumacher. And now he goes to the most successful team. I know it's a lot of history in terms of Ferrari. They haven't won a championship, since Kimi Räikkönen. So we're putting on a little bit of time now. But they are still the most successful Formula One team over the course of the sport. And they've been there since day dot. So it is kind of that perfect storm of most impressive driver we've seen in a very, very long time. Most accolades going to the team that is synonymous with Formula One. As Sebastian Vettel said himself, everybody is a Ferrari fan because you just have to respect that Ferrari are Formula One. And if Ferrari ever left Formula One, it would be a huge drop to the sport. But I agree with a couple of people in the chat here. I've seen the contract, or I've seen the suspected contract terms. First and foremost, he was offered a longer contract from Ferrari. So I think Lewis Hamilton wanted to have a little bit more longevity. I think he has decided that he wants to stay into the new regulations. You've got to think Mercedes, they offered him, what, a 2-year contract? It was a 1 year plus an additional one, which only got him up to 2026, didn't get him into 2026. And now Ferrari have been able to offer him a contract that seems like it's paying a lot more, like $100 million contract a year is insane, makes him the highest paid Formula One driver by a considerable margin to what Max Verstappen, who will now be in second place. Max Verstappen kind of was the highest paid driver for a little while there, but now Hamilton has retaken that throne. But I think there's also the fact that Ferrari have been able to offer him a contract into 2026. And maybe Mercedes would have wanted to do that. Maybe they were trying to find an agreement. But I also feel like Mercedes kind of want to get their ducks in a row a little bit. They want to see what George Russell can do. And they need to think about whether or not Lewis Hamilton is going to... If Lewis Hamilton just continues on, it's sort of how long can we stick with him and not start to think about the future, especially when other teams, I actually sort of talked about Ferrari in terms of this, where I thought they were doing the right thing, choosing Charles Leclerc to build around. You know, you've got Verstappen to build around at Red Bull, you've got Norris to build around at McLaren, and these drivers are all years younger, tens of years younger than Lewis Hamilton. There's like a decade, this new generation. How long could Mercedes get by building around Hamilton still, and having Lewis Hamilton there, when really they probably need to start focusing on George Russell just that little bit more, because I don't think George Russell has actually made the steps forward that they were hoping he would. But we'll get to George Russell in a second. Oh, thank you so much, mate. Lewis moved to Ferrari is following the steps of legends like Lauda, Schumacher, Alonso, Vettel. That is also very true. The iconic red of Ferrari, having that iconic relationship with the Ferrari team. Obviously, he already knew Frederick Vasseur. He already has Ferraris that he's collected. So it is kind of moving in that direction. Also, the fact that, Mercedes haven't been strong since 2021, as Claire said. And Ferrari, okay, they've been, as you say, questionable at times. But it does feel like Ferrari are closer to Red Bull, doesn't it? Which is strange. I was having this debate with Taryn the other day, and I realised, kind of moving on to the next thing, is that if you look at leaving Mercedes and the fact that you look at the Constructors' Championship, okay, Red Bull finished first and Mercedes finished second. But actually, kind of go back into your brain. Was there any race in 2023 where you think Mercedes were the clear second fastest car? I think there are maybe two over the course of the entire season. I think Qatar, they were the second fastest car. And then, obviously, Lewis Hamilton threw it in the bin by hitting George Russell on the first lap. And I think Austin, they were the second fastest car, but they were also illegal. So I think they're the only two. I can't think of another race where Mercedes were clearly ahead of Ferrari, McLaren, or Aston Martin. I think they kind of got second place in the Constructors' Championship by just having a little bit of consistency, right? They just had a little bit more consistency than their partners. You think Ferrari had their ups and downs over the course of the season. They still had reliability issues. It became really apparent, especially towards the end of the season, where you had like Carlos Sainz missing out in Qatar. You had Charles Leclerc crashing out in Brazil, where they would have picked up good points. Bahrain, even at the start of the season, Charles Leclerc missed out on a podium. Okay, we all celebrate Fernando Alonso. He got the podium in the Aston Martin. It would have been Charles Leclerc had Ferrari not thrown away. About that contract announcement, before his announcement, we'll know the news had pretty much been confirmed, spread everywhere. That is very true. Had no option but to announce it. It was obviously leaked somewhere or another, or at least there was some kind of issue, right, with Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. I just think if you're Lewis Hamilton now, you've seen that fact. You've seen the fact that the Mercedes car was never really the second fastest. I feel like Aston Martin was the second fastest car for the first 8 to 10 races. Then Ferrari kind of interchanged as the second fastest car at various tracks. Like, I think Monza, they were clearly the second fastest car. Obviously, Singapore, they won the Grand Prix with Carlos Sainz. It just felt like Ferrari were closer to Red Bull more often than not. And it was just reliability and a little bit of Ferrari craziness that got in their way. And then McLaren, actually, I think when their car worked, which was, again, intermittent, for the first 10 races of the season, absolutely not. Post that, okay, there were a few weekends where the McLaren car just didn't suit the track. I'm thinking Vegas, it was an absolute, like, terrible Grand Prix. But again, that was Ferrari closest to Red Bull in Vegas. And when McLaren drops out, it was Ferrari that kind of took their place. And I feel like everyone else had real up and downs, which I don't think we'll have in 2024. I think McLaren will be more settled. I think Aston Martin will be more settled. I think Ferrari will be more settled because Frederic Vasseur is pointing them in the right direction. And therefore, I feel like Mercedes coming into 2024 now are in a real place where they're struggling. And I was trying to put together my Constructors' Championship predictions. And genuinely, I thought, if there is going to be one of those big three teams, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, that is going to drop out of that top three, my money would be on Mercedes, which seems so strange. They came second in the championship, but it just doesn't quite click for me. It just doesn't quite make sense that Mercedes are the second fastest team. I think they got a little bit lucky to be the second fastest team. I think Lewis Hamilton dragged them to a second place in the standings. And I think he knows that. And he doesn't want to do that again. So going into 2024 and then 2025, he wants to have one season at Ferrari and then maybe look into 2026, have that season at Ferrari in 2026, which I think is damning to Mercedes in two ways. He doesn't want to stay. The early indications from this Mercedes era going into 2024, the new W15, he clearly doesn't want it. And then secondly, it means that going into 2026, he also, is a bit 50-50 on the Mercedes power unit. He's taking that gamble. He's saying, okay, I think Ferrari might be able to make that better power unit. Because really, the 2026 regulations are going to come down to the power unit quite a lot because we're going to see 6-7 different power units on the track over the course of like the 2026 through to 2030 regulations. So it's going to be really, really strange. And it's going to be really damning for Mercedes that Lewis Hamilton has decided to make this switch. I know that he's said it's for himself, it's because he needs a new challenge, but I think behind the scenes, there's got to be other things going on there for Lewis Hamilton where he's not quite clicking, is he? And let's kind of think about, oh yeah, I said that move, the multi-year contract for Lewis Hamilton kind of goes into that case. Let's talk about Ferrari then, because I'd love to get your opinions on this. Again, I threw my opinions just kind of haphazardly out there in the video that I did yesterday. But if we think about Charles Leclerc and all of this, supposedly Charles Leclerc knew Lewis Hamilton was coming to the team. We've all seen that clip of Charles Leclerc in the press conference. They ask him, what do you look for in a teammate? And he does the whole, hello, Lewis. We've all seen that clip now. It's gone around everywhere over the course of the last few days. And it does make you wonder what Charles Leclerc is kind of thinking in all of this. I don't think he'd want Lewis Hamilton as a teammate. Okay, I think he backs himself, right? He clearly backs himself. He knows that Ferrari believes in him. And he's always known that he's the number one over Carlos Sainz. As much as Carlos Sainz has done everything that he possibly can to try and prove that he is as good as Charles Leclerc. And to be fair, I think Carlos Sainz has done nothing wrong over the course of his Ferrari career. I think he's been really, really solid. But I think going into next season, if you're Charles Leclerc, like say you're Charles Leclerc right now, would you rather, you're going into 2025, you're Charles Leclerc, would you rather look across the garage and see Carlos Sainz, a driver who you've worked with for a couple of years, you know really well, you know that you've got the edge on, right? Charles Leclerc knows that he's got that little edge of pace over Carlos Sainz the majority of the time. Okay, sometimes it's fallen in Carlos Sainz's favour, but that's because Carlos Sainz is an exceptionally good driver. And sometimes he will have tracks that suit him better, or he'll find a setup that clicks for him in a slightly better way. But generally speaking, I don't think we kind of question the fact that Charles Leclerc is the number one there. And he's just signed a new contract, right? He knew about Lewis Hamilton possibly coming, but he probably thinks, okay, I'm still the number one here if Carlos Sainz is there. If he looks across the garage and sees Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, a driver who has won over 100 Grand Prix, that is a very different challenge for Leclerc. And okay, it's Lewis Hamilton coming towards the end of his career. I feel like, it's not the Lewis Hamilton we saw. I want to say like 2015 through 2018 was like real peak Lewis Hamilton. Just felt like that battle with Nico Rosberg, I remember so vividly. Like the battles that they had between them, I think the level that they dragged each other to was so high. And then Hamilton kind of continued that on for a good few seasons. You can maybe chuck 2019 in there. He had that battle with Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari and just kind of put him to the sword. But if you're Charles Leclerc, you'd want the car developed around you. You'd want to be the main man at Ferrari. And now you've got, as I say, the biggest Formula One driver in the sport. Like the most pull, the most media attention is always on Lewis Hamilton. Everything kind of goes to Hamilton. I just don't know. I think Ferrari want a driver that can actually help the team develop a car. That's very true. That's very true. I suppose they're looking for that experience. They're almost looking for like a level head. Carlos Sainz is that to me. I feel like Carlos Sainz, that came out a little bit more in 2023, especially under Vasseur. It felt like Carlos Sainz was able to be that level head a lot of the time and kind of say to them, look, we need to be moving in this direction. We need to understand the car in this way. But Lewis Hamilton does do that to an extra degree, right? Lewis Hamilton can come in. He can say, I'm going to do this. We're going to do that. This is how we did it at Mercedes. This is how we won championships. When Toto Wolff came in 20, or when would it have been? Lewis Hamilton moved across, 2013 when the new regulations came in? And that like all clicked from there. So it's like 2013, 2014, Lewis Hamilton's moved across. This is what we did. And then it kind of clicked for him. If I got paid 100 million to drive a car, I'd buy my own country. That is, the best are you. You're not wrong. Charles is better than George, and George gave Lewis a run for his money. That's very true as well. I feel like if you're Lewis, you're looking at Charles Leclerc as a teammate, and there is a bit of a threat there. I don't think it's going to be a problem in the same vein as Hamilton Rosberg, by the way. I know those parallels were made between Hamilton Rosberg and Hamilton Russell, but I feel like just because Hamilton is that stage older, like you've got to remember all these other guys are in their 20s. Norris, Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell, they're all in their 20s now. Hamilton, by the time he gets to Ferrari, is going to be 40. He's in a completely different category of driver by that point. And I feel like, it's an interesting driver pairing. It's clearly the best driver pairing on the grid. If you've got Charles Leclerc and a Hamilton that is absolutely firing, and both of them are really getting the most out of that car. But I don't know. Lewis realized loads of attention wasn't on him, pulled the biggest driver move of the last 5 years. Yeah, that's also true. He maybe, starting to dwindle a little bit. Max Verstappen's getting all the attention recently, breaking record after record. These records that Hamilton never quite got to, even in his dominance, wasn't ever able to, break the record like the 9 wins in a row or that kind of thing. Hamilton never quite got there. Whereas he's maybe kind of seeing Max Verstappen doing that and being like, that's frustrating. Never quite me. Let's see then. Carlos Sainz, because I've noticed a couple of people mentioning Carlos Sainz. Verstar said, Sainz got so unlucky going from P4 in the standings to P7 in the last race. That is very true. I feel like Carlos Sainz did get a little bit unlucky with the Ferrari-ism of the just being a Ferrari driver. You look at Qatar where he could have probably picked up points. Actually, I can't think of any other massive reliability problems Carlos Sainz had. There were a few different team dynamic problems, though, and some issues with strategy and various things over the course of the season. Yeah, I feel like Carlos Sainz did get a little bit done over there in terms of finishing in the standings a little bit lower than he possibly should have. But, again, because you're Carlos Sainz in all of this, right? So Hamilton is going to take the place of Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc is going to be his teammate. I just feel like you've got one more year here, Carlos. And as much as I feel a little bit sorry for him in all of this, I think he's done so much that actually he is going to be able to almost go to any team. Like, he is good enough that I could see him going to any team. It's just whether or not he wants to go there and what kind of thing he wants to be in the future. So for me, if it's Carlos Sainz, right? You've got two options almost in terms of Carlos. You've got the first option is you stay at a top team. Okay, so Carlos Sainz could replace Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. There's also been links to going back to Red Bull and being part of the Red Bull family once again. Got to remember, he started at Toro Rosso. He was there. He could possibly move over to an Aston Martin, which I know is just that lower, like that rung down in terms of like the big teams in Formula One. But Aston Martin are trying to break into that. And I feel like he could be that Fernando Alonso replacement or Lance Stroll replacement at Aston Martin. Like, he could definitely go in that direction. Or, if he wants to be a number one, he kind of has to look a little bit lower down the grid. Because, as I say, if he goes to Mercedes, he's going to be number 2 to Russell. If he goes to Red Bull, he's going to be number 2 to Max. If he goes to Aston, he's probably going to be number 2 to Fernando Alonso. Like, I can imagine that Lance Stroll would be the driver to step aside in 2025. And Carlos Sainz going there. There's not a spot for him at McLaren. And then you're looking at kind of taking a step down, right? You're kind of looking, okay, the next is Alpine. Could go back there. Was a Renault driver, of course, in a previous life. Would they replace Ocon Gasly for Carlos Sainz? I personally would. I think Carlos Sainz is a much better driver than both Ocon and Gasly. And therefore, he could go there. But I've seen this, right? And most of you guys in the chat are now saying, surely it's Sauber, right? He goes to Sauber, is the number one there, and he can build the entire thing around him. And that is a big gamble for Carlos Sainz, because he's not only got to sit through the 2025 season, where they're still going to be Sauber, and let's face it, they're going to be absolutely abysmal. I am not seeing Sauber making any real progress over the next couple of seasons. So Carlos Sainz is effectively throwing away a year of his career there, and a big gamble on the Audi project working. I think that's the only problem with going to Sauber that year earlier, is you are, as I say, throwing away a year and gambling that Audi are going to be really, really good. And it's just like, is Carlos Sainz willing to make that bet? Is Carlos Sainz, going to be convinced by the Audi project so much that he's willing to effectively drive around at the back for a year? That's where it breaks that not sure for me. I see Sainz in a Red Bull more than a Mercedes. I think either way, though, is what he wants. Does he want to be a number one? If he wants to be a number one, he's looking at Sauber, maybe Williams, depending on what Alex Albon does. I think that's, if he wants to be a number one, I think they're the two teams. Haas is a no for me. I just can't see that happening. And he's not going to go to the second Red Bull team, because that's effectively just pointless, right? He's not going to make that big of a step down and go and be the Racing Bulls number one, because Racing Bull is such a strange team to enter that dynamic anyway. I think it's just a poison chalice to go in there, unless you are wanted so heavily by Red Bull and they've kind of saying to you there's a seat becoming available. I think that's the only reason Daniel Ricciardo has gone to Racing Bulls, is because he knows that Perez seat is effectively his. Like, I know people are linking Carlos Sainz now to Red Bull. I think it's already done. I think Daniel Ricciardo is already in that second seat. I think that's kind of done and dusted. But yeah, would you, if you were Carlos Sainz, okay, Sauber is what I'm seeing in the chat. If he goes into the Audi project, I know the Sainz and his dad, they've both got the Audi connection. His dad won Dakar in an Audi. Absolutely fine. Yeah, that's all good. You can have that Audi connection and you can have a love for Audi. But if Audi aren't good, and you're Carlos Sainz, you then need an exit out of there. Carlos Sainz is too good to be at a team. If Carlos Sainz, right, say midway through 2023, Carlos Sainz took the place of Valtteri Bottas, you would think he was absolutely mental. He's going from literally the upper echelon of the grid, winning races in Singapore, winning races in 2022, one in Silverstone. Okay, he's won races over the course of the last few seasons. And he's dropping down to an Alfa Romeo team where the best you can offer for most weekends is being the 8th fastest car. The 8th fastest car. That is what you're offering Carlos Sainz for the 2025 season if he goes to Sauber. The 8th fastest car on the grid at best. At best, the 8th fastest car. Likely the 9th fastest car. Because I think the Williams and the Racing Bulls will be quicker than the Sauber cars. I think it will be the Sauber and Haas cars running around at the back together. And he has to endure a year of that. He has to endure a year of being in the 9th quickest car. Something I don't know if he's ever done. You know, you look at the Renault he went into, the McLaren he went into, they were midfield cars. He would have to spend a year at Sauber in the worst car on the grid. It's a huge gamble. Huge gamble to go to Audi, in my opinion. Like, I know it makes logical sense, but racing-wise, put yourself in the head of Carlos Sainz. That is a huge gamble to make. Very true. Always better to be in a seat. Oh, yeah, definitely so. I feel like he definitely needs to stay in Formula One. It would be ridiculous if Carlos Sainz wasn't on the grid. He is phenomenal. He is one of the best drivers on the grid. Easily, I was going to say top 5, but actually it's probably sort of top 8, isn't it? Top 8 drivers, Carlos Sainz. You're looking at kind of Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc, your top 3 usually. Norris is kind of that rung below. I'd say Albon has kind of entered that conversation. But I feel like Sainz is in that realm in terms of like performances over the course of 2023. I feel like him and Albon had comparable seasons in very different circumstances, but comparable seasons. Audi is ahead of schedule. He'd be joined Andreas Seidel, sorry. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things that will kind of ebb and flow over the course of this season. Be interesting to see how Carlos Sainz, drives for Ferrari, knowing that he's not going to be there next year. Doesn't need to, give way to Charles Leclerc in any way, does he? It's just like the fact that he can just do what he wants, basically, can Carlos Sainz. But I like your thought process. I do like the Sauber links. I do like the Audi links. But yeah, it's one of those. Let's talk George Russell for a quick second, right? Because I've been slated recently. I said on a podcast recently that George Russell, for me in 2023, was the worst driver in those kind of top teams, besides maybe Lance Stroll, right? And I don't think that's a mad shout to say. I think, you look at the course of the season, you look at the fact that he finished 8th in the driver's standings. His teammate Lewis Hamilton finished 3rd in the driver's standings by a considerable margin, had way more points than him. Thank you for subscribing, John, mate. Appreciate that. Oh, sorry, Jonin. Red John, just because from the UK and everyone's called John. But if you look at George Russell, right, first and foremost, I think we'll move towards Mercedes now. We will address who replaces Lewis Hamilton. But I have a question for you first and foremost about George Russell. Because I think George Russell is pivotal in the decision around who replaces Lewis Hamilton. I feel like it's really important to understand where George Russell sits in this. But as I was saying before, I've been slated recently because I said George Russell finished 8th in the Drivers' Championship, and I think he warranted that 8th place. I don't think he got unlucky. I think he threw away points that were his own fault. I don't think Mercedes cost him that many points at many times. I think Lewis Hamilton cost him a few points in Qatar, but apart from that, it was generally George costing himself points. He crashed in Canada, crashed in Singapore, didn't do very well in Vegas, where he bumped into Max Verstappen. There was a few incidents over the course of it. He finished 8th. If you look at that tier list of drivers, right? So you look just below him is Oscar Piastri and Lance Stroll. George Russell was never really battling with Oscar Piastri and Lance Stroll. So the fact that he's finished above those two doesn't really give me any kind of wow, he's done amazingly. And then you look below that at the Alpines, the AlphaTauris, etc., etc. Like George Russell has not done well to finish in 8th place. You then look at all of the drivers above him, and it's everyone he was actually racing. So everyone that he was actively racing week in, week out, your Ferraris, your Lando Norris, your Fernando Alonso, his teammate, everyone that he was actually racing in and around beat him. So he was worst out of the 8 drivers that actually matter to him, right? He was worst in that 8 driver category. Therefore, he at the moment is not looking like the Lewis Hamilton replacement that he was supposed to be. You know, you look at him coming in from Formula 2 into that Williams seat, and as soon as he won Formula 2, he was talked about as the Lewis Hamilton replacement, the heir to the throne, the successor to the king, the driver who was going to go into Mercedes and win championships post Lewis Hamilton. Has George Russell actually improved that much in those few seasons? If you compare him to Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, you could even throw in Alex Albon. If you look at those 4 drivers, and I feel like they are a category of 4 in themselves. If you look at those 4, I think George is the worst. I think George had the worst 2023 season out of those 4 drivers. And I think since coming into Formula 1, maybe Albon aside, because he's had a year out, so you can give Albon kind of a leeway of a year or so, I think George Russell is the worst. I think Lando Norris is better than him. I think Charles Leclerc is better than him. And I think both of those drivers are continuing to get better. I think George Russell's plateaued quite heavily. I don't feel like that's his fault, though. I feel like there is a fundamental thing here with George Russell where he spent way too long in the Williams. Way too long. And because he spent so long in the Williams, fighting nobody, driving around nowhere, he just didn't build some of the kind of midfieldy resilience that you need. You know, you look at Charles Leclerc, went straight into the Ferrari, and the Ferrari was straight away kind of up there, battling. He had a season in the midfield, but he's kind of always in and amongst the point scoring positions, and he's had to learn on the fly every single weekend. He's had to adapt every single weekend. Same with Lando Norris. Gone into the McLaren, a McLaren team that's always been in and amongst the midfield, has kind of always had that opportunity to finish in and around the point scoring positions. And therefore, it's just like George, for me, lost out a little bit there. Oh, Ariosto, thank you so much, mate. Member for 3 months. Welcome back. Appreciate it. And Just a Bozo, thank you for subscribing as well. But yeah, for me, George Russell, he's just lacking a little bit. Just lacking a little bit. And therefore, as Claire says, I think now, going into 2024, there was already pressure on George Russell to perform in 2024 because he needed to improve. There is now a considerable more pressure, like a substantial amount more pressure on George Russell to perform because he currently isn't that number 1 driver for me. I just don't think he is. I just don't think he's going to be able to be that number 1 if he doesn't step up massively in 2024. And that's why I think Mercedes need to be calm about this. Calm take, right? Calm. Let George Russell have a few races this season. I've already, seen a few bits and pieces where like Mercedes are in talks with this driver and that driver and X and Y and Z. I just think calm at Mercedes. Give George an opportunity at the beginning of the 2024 season, give him a framework, say 10 races, right? Or up until the summer break. Say to George, we're not going to look at replacing Lewis until you have shown us what you can do over the course of the first half of the season. And depending on how that goes, right, as Mercedes, either George steps up to the plate, George steps up to the plate. He's your number one driver. He's the guy you build around, right? And that's perfect. If George does that, then you need a number two to George. Fine. That's the kind of driver you're looking for. You're looking for George Russell's Valtteri Bottas. You're looking for a secondary driver that is going to go behind George Russell in the rankings and sit there. If George Russell doesn't step up, George Russell doesn't become that key player, he doesn't become that obvious team number one, then you are looking for a Lewis Hamilton replacement, right? You are not looking for a number two. You are looking for a full Lewis Hamilton replacement, a driver that can come in, be incredibly competitive, and possibly get to the point where they can win championships, because you are not relying on George Russell to win you championships anymore, right? You have to make that decision. Is George Russell going to be your driver to win you championships, or are you going to look for somebody else who, if they came in, would win you championships? And that's why I think people kind of skip that. I think people kind of see the Mercedes badge and they go straight for Fernando Alonso. If Fernando Alonso comes in, that is a damning indictment on George Russell. Because what you are saying, I think, if you pick a driver like Fernando Alonso to come in, Fernando Alonso will want to come in and be the team number one. And he will force his way into that. Fernando Alonso will be the team number one. It would be... I know that George Russell and Fernando get along very nicely, but it's so different. You talk about the drivers all the time where, you know, they are how they are. They're going about their day. As soon as they put the helmet on, completely different beast, different animal. Fernando Alonso is the epitome of that, I feel. As soon as he gets that helmet on, he does not care that that is George Russell. He is the number one at Mercedes. He will be gunning for it. And that's the only reason I just don't think it's the right idea to go for someone like Fernando Alonso if George Russell is going to be your number one. So they're the two avenues I'm going down. They're the two thought processes I have. I think if we're going down one avenue, we need a number two. If we're going down the other avenue, we need a key player and a number one driver replacement. They're the two situations I think we are in. Situation reminds me of Michael retiring in 2001. Exactly. Then Kimi coming race along, rookie. Was Kimi going to be good enough? That kind of situation. Alonso's not going to Mercedes. I agree. I don't think Alonso's going to Mercedes, but I've seen a lot of people linking Fernando Alonso as kind of their first choice. And I think that is a poor choice. So I'll throw out the question to you guys first, because I've got my opinion on it. See other side of screen. But who would you go for as the second driver in that 2025 Mercedes? I think Russell and Danny Ricciardo, says Motorsport Magpie. Okay. 100% correct. Thank you so much. I try and think these things through. I think 2021 and 2022 were exceptional years for George Russell. That is very true. But he's just kind of plateaued a little bit for me, I think, where Lando Norris has kind of improved year on year. And okay, I'm a little bit biased. I'll hold my hands up. I'm a little bit biased, but I do genuinely think that Lando Norris has continued to improve year on year on year. George Russell has plateaued a touch and had a really, really poor 2023 season, where Lando Norris kind of came to life in 2023 for me, I'd say. Shouldn't be the number one for Mercedes in the first place. Yeah, I think, you know, whether or not he's going there. Don't see George Russell sticking it if he's the number one. So you guys are thinking, okay, they need to go down the route of it's probably not going to be committing to George Russell as that number one driver. And then you can start to throw loads of different names. Because again, I think you go down two different avenues here. And you've got to think about the implications of each one. So Earth Arrow has thrown a name out there, Oscar Piastri. I also like the idea of Oscar Piastri going to Mercedes, but I think if you choose, okay, so if you're Mercedes and you choose someone like Fernando Alonso or Oscar Piastri or Kimi Antonelli or that kind of either really old but very, very successful driver or very, very young upstart driver, you're kind of saying to George Russell, like, you're not the number one now. or you're not going to be the number one in a couple of years' time. I think most people will accept that it's likely that George Russell will be replaced by Kimi Antonelli or Oscar Piastri. I feel like most people at this point see Oscar Piastri's ceiling as a little bit higher. Or they see Kimi Antonelli's ceiling as a little bit higher. Peter Windsor said on a live that Albon has been offered a 3-year deal at Red Bull. I don't. No. I don't. All right, he might have been. Fine. Peter Windsor can have his say. I'm sure he knows. I don't agree. Like if Red Bull did that, I think they'd be doing a silly thing, in my opinion. George and Albon for 2025, then maybe Antonelli to replace one of those in 2026. But that's the problem. I don't know if you can convince Alex Albon to sign a 1-year contract when he is the main man at Williams. Okay, it's a big step up to go to Mercedes, but the problem Mercedes have, right, is if it was 2016 when Nico Rosberg left, and again, I've seen a lot of people say that this is similar. It's not in any way whatsoever. In 2016, when Nico Rosberg left, they had their pick of any driver on the grid because they could say, if you come to Mercedes, you will win races. And Valtteri Bottas is proof of that. He came to Mercedes, he won 10 races. That is a lot of races. Now, you look at the drivers that have won single-figure races in Formula 1. Valtteri Bottas has won double-figure races, 10 races in Formula 1. And he only did that because he went to that Mercedes team at the time. And they had that draw, right? Mercedes at that point had Lewis Hamilton, who'd won championship, okay, then just lost out to Nico Rosberg, but it was very, very close. Okay, they don't have that at the moment. George Russell now is not Lewis Hamilton of 2016. So the driver that they're left with is very different. And the opportunity that they can offer is very different as well. There are no parallels to 2016, in my opinion. Again, I feel like people just jump to these conclusions without actually thinking about it. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, like Lewis Hamilton 2016 was an absolute domination of a driver. George Russell isn't that now. Mercedes' car in 2016 was better than the rest by a considerable margin. They don't have that now. It's just not the same. So I feel like you can say, oh, Fernando, right? Fernando, come to Mercedes. Are Mercedes in any better of a position to win races than Aston Martin? Really? After the 2023 season? Are they actually? Because it felt like Aston Martin, okay, they had a real dip in the middle of the year, but they started the year better than Mercedes. They ended the year quite well. Mercedes started to fall off a little bit towards the end of the year as well. Think about Brazil was an absolute travesty. One of the tracks they're usually better at. Would Fernando Alonso be like, well, I'm not guaranteed wins here at Mercedes. Is it worth moving across? And similar, I think if you said to Max Verstappen, let's take it back. If you said to Max Verstappen in 2016, this Max Verstappen now, imagine he can time travel. You said to Max Verstappen in 2016, you can come to Mercedes. He'd say yes, right? Because he would be up against Lewis Hamilton, okay, but it would be guaranteeing winning races. If you said to Max Verstappen now, you can move to Mercedes 2024, he would laugh in your face. He would laugh in your face. He doesn't want to go to the Mercedes. No one who really wants to win races will want to think about moving to Mercedes right now. And I think it's the same with Lando Norris as well. I've seen people link Lando Norris to this Mercedes seat. That would be such a stupid idea for Lando Norris. Such a stupid idea. McLaren looked like they were on a better trajectory exiting 2023 going into 2024 than Mercedes did. Okay, maybe in a few years' time, if the McLaren project doesn't quite click, then he moves to Mercedes. I think moving to Mercedes for 2025, or at least committing to Mercedes now for the 2025 season, would be absolutely mental. To not see at least how well this McLaren car does over the course of this first half of the season. Mercedes are not the draw that they used to be. Mercedes are not the guarantee of championships and wins that they used to be. It is a new Mercedes that we are looking at. Sebastian might come back to Mercedes. I've seen this one as well. I don't see it. I don't think it's happening. I think Sebastian Vettel is more than happy with kind of drawing a line in his Formula One career. I know people go backwards and forwards, and they come back. We've seen Kimi come back. We've seen Alonso come back. I just don't know. Seb just doesn't quite strike me as that kind of character. It felt like he left at the right time for him. I think Albon wouldn't mind going to Merck on a short contract. I think he'd still have a higher chance of winning with them than at Williams. Oh, yeah, definitely. He's got a higher chance of winning with them than at Williams. But it's whether he wants to play second fiddle. It's, again, that Carlos Sainz factor. Would Carlos Sainz want to be the number 2 again? Would he want to go into a Mercedes team where if George Russell steps up, he's the number 2 again? It's just like, ugh. Very frustrating. Russell is there to raise the stakes, not inhibit the team as an underdog. No point having him as a number 2 with Andrea Antonelli in the waiting. Much more consistent driver to drive alongside him. Yeah, that's very true. Maybe it's kind of you put Alex Albon in the seat and then you'd actually replace George Russell with Kimi Antonelli in a couple of years' time. I can see that. I can see that. That's the thing. You've got to think, are you replacing Hamilton or are you replacing Russell long term? They're the two ideas. Gasly, I've noticed, has popped up a couple of times in the chat as well. I think if he was still at AlphaTauri, yes. I think Gasly is now the number 1 at Alpine. I think he was so much quicker than Ocon at the end of the 2023 season. I think it'd be very difficult to budge him from that Alpine project. You've got to remember, he's also at Alpine for a lot of the Alpine press stuff that they do. Like, Gasly is a huge draw for Alpine, but also Alpine being a French team, Gasly being a French driver, that is huge for him. He does a lot of events for the Alpine team, and he gets to do a lot of extra stuff outside of Formula One because of that connection with Alpine. I don't know how that would work if he was at Mercedes. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think he's an excellent choice. Not quite there. Yuki? Not for me. Not for me. Yuki would be weird. I think he'd go, yeah, Yuki will go to Aston with the Honda engines kind of thing, as F1 Dude Edit says. It's an interesting one, though. Mick. No. I've seen this. Who was it? It was Laws, wasn't it? Laws, who I love, by the way. I met him at a recording of The Last Lap. May it rest in peace. Met Laws, got on with him really well. Loved his energy. I think Laws' energy, like, there's a reason he gets so many people just coming back and watching his videos every single day. Like, his energy is amazing. But he said Mick Schumacher. I think it's absolutely mental. I think it's absolutely mental to chuck Mick Schumacher in there. Not for me. Not even close. I don't think he's in like the top 10 options. I really don't. I think, Albon for me is number 1. Number 2 would be Carlos Sainz. I think if you can convince Carlos Sainz that actually, he can maybe dislodge George Russell as the number 1 and kind of go in that direction. Ricciardo is a weird one. I think Ricciardo he's going to end up as at Red Bull. I think that's kind of already written in the stars. Ricciardo to Red Bull, the return, that kind of thing. Christian Horner absolutely loves him. They spent a lot of money kind of displacing Nick de Vries to get him back in the AlphaTauri last season. It is, yeah, I don't know. Daniel Ricciardo's not on the radar for me. Alonso's up there. But again, I don't think you convince Alonso that Mercedes is a better plan moving forwards than Aston Martin. Because at Aston Martin, like, Alonso's effectively been given the keys to the factory and everything under the sun. Alonso is effectively God at Aston Martin, and he wouldn't quite be that. Thank you, Caleb, for the subscription. Appreciate that, mate. Logan or Latifi? Nope. no. We're getting silly now, aren't we? Getting silly. I did debate doing a video. I think I will do a video because I put on a community tab. I love the community tab, by the way. I do read every single comment. I know that I don't answer every single one because because of the community tab, I get a hell of a lot more. Like, I think my Lewis Hamilton post yesterday on the community tab got something like 400 comments. I was just like blown away by it. So that's why I don't always, answer every single one, but I do read every single comment. And I did debate doing a video where I go through every single driver that was talked about in the comment section of that, because there were so many. I'm just thinking, like, there was Albon, there was Alonso, there was Sainz, there was Ocon, there was Bottas, there was Kimi Antonelli, there was De Vries, Hulkenberg. It just went on and on. Vesti, Stoffel Van Dorn was mentioned by people. Like, he should come back in. I was just like, where are these people from? What are they talking about? They're lost. Porsche go to Sauber. I think Porsche has missed the boat, I don't think so. I don't think so. There was a jerk reposting my YouTube shorts on Instagram. I mean, I don't really mind that, if I'm honest, because I'll tell you why I don't mind that. Firstly, you really don't make very much money on Instagram. You have to get a hell of a ton of views. Like, I don't make that much money from YouTube, but in comparison, I get an obscene amount more on YouTube than Instagram. So if he's getting enough views for it to be worth it on Instagram, fair play to him. Secondly, because it's my short, they'll probably look for me, and hopefully they'll kind of move towards the YouTube channel. For me, YouTube is kind of like the hub. Anything that gets people into this, and actually these live streams are my favorite thing. Just having a chat to you guys is my favorite thing. So, like, anything that gets people to here, fine by me. Fine by me. Teo Porsche an option. He's an option. I just think, Mercedes don't want a rookie, do they? Mercedes don't want a rookie. You look at even the best of the best usually have a year somewhere else. I know Hamilton is the exception to that rule, went straight into a McLaren car and started winning races. But in recent years, nobody has gone straight into a top team. Daniel Ricciardo didn't go straight to Red Bull. He had a few years elsewhere. Charles Leclerc didn't go straight to Ferrari. He had a year at Sauber. Max Verstappen didn't go straight to Red Bull. He had a year. George Russell didn't go straight to Mercedes. I feel like those three, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, at this point, you need a year elsewhere. You need some experience before you go right to the top end. Because not only, if you go straight into a Mercedes seat as a rookie, not only are you, one, trying to learn Formula One, which we have seen from rookies in previous years, is a tough task. Like, Oscar Piastri, as good as he was this year, if he was in a Ferrari or a Mercedes, he'd have been battered at some weekends. He'd have absolutely been killed some weekends for some of his performances, because he just didn't have the pace. He didn't have the race pace. I'm going to be honest. Just did not have the race pace. You can strike me as a Stoffel fan. Yeah, Stoffel Van Dorn, man. I can't believe he got a shout somewhere. Stroll and Joe should genuinely leave Formula One. Joe, I'm interested in. Joe, I think there is a seat for in 2025. I'll tell you that. Little spoiler for my 2025 predictions. I do think there is a seat for Joe. It's not Sauber, though. Brendan Hartley. Is that shirt from Hollister? I have absolutely no idea where this is from. My girlfriend bought this for me for my birthday. And then I've worn it in like every video since, because it's kind of like my recording jumper. Sits on a little chair over there. Chuck it on to record. Take it off when I'm finished. It's just there. But yeah, actually, I think I might make that video, and just go through the insane shouts that some people have said. I don't rate Joe swapping for Porsche. Yeah, I think the problem is Joe brings enough money to Sauber that until Audi come in, they know they're in no man's land, and they effectively might as well take the money. Because Porsche, what is he actually going to do? Is Porsche going to come into Sauber and suddenly they're going to start getting points every single weekend? No. So I just feel like they're at a weird crossroads where they're waiting for Audi. They don't need to change anything. They can bring in the Joe money for the sake of it. I feel like 2025, Joe might get picked off again for his money by another team. And I think Sauber will start to put the Audi drivers in place. And I don't think Audi will want Porsche either. So I think Porsche, unfortunately, I don't think will get a spot on the Formula One grid. I'd really like to see, you know where I'd like to see Porsche? I'd like to see Porsche in IndyCar. I feel like he just really suit that. Because he's quite a smooth driver, generally speaking, and he's very consistent, right? He didn't win races in Formula 2. In fact, when he won his championship last year, he only won one race. But he's very consistent. I feel like he'd do quite well in IndyCar. I feel like he'd make that switch over quite well. Feel bad for both Max and Yuki. Why do you feel bad for Max? That no one should feel. Alex Palou is a great shout, by the way. I really love Alex Palou. I did a whole video on Alex Palou and never filmed it, I don't think. I wrote a whole script. I looked into Alex Palou, and then I just kind of took a step back and was like, is he ever really going to get into Formula One? Maybe I'll just record that video for the sake of it. I'll just have a chat about Alex Palou, because I did so much research on him. And he would be such a good Formula One driver, in my opinion. He drives an Indy car in a way that it almost drives like a Formula One car. It's very impressive. Like, he is so smooth with the Indy car, considering, you know, most of the IndyCar drivers kind of drag the car around the circuit. He really does have that very smooth touch. Alex Palou and Kimi Antonelli. What a driver lineup that would be. Hell of a risk for Mercedes, by the way. Goodness me. Joe for Haas. Shh, dark epic. Don't give away the video. Max got everything he wants. Treated like royalty. Very true. Please publish the video. Yeah, I'll throw it out there at some point. I feel like I think I recorded it, edited it, and it was like on the channel, and then I never quite found anything. Any kind of avenue to upload it into. Alex Palou has dominated every series except F1. He has. Yeah. It was weird as well, though, because he was on the trajectory to get into Formula One. He kind of went down that path. He went down the kind of Formula route, and there just wasn't quite a space for him. And he was part of the Red Bull driver program, wasn't he? Or am I thinking? No, I'm thinking of Pato O'Ward. Pato O'Ward was part of the Red Bull driver program, and then they said they were going to drop him, so he went over to Indy. But Alex Palou, similar kind of thing. It was like he didn't quite see how he was going to fit into the Formula One grid, so he decided to go over to Indy, and then it was just, been phenomenally quick. Mazepin. No. Can we agree that Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, I think that's probably it in terms of like the proper good choices. Then a tier below that Mercedes could go for, like Ocon, Bottas, I feel like it's fair. And then like the real rogue outside shout is Kimi. Kimi would have to like win Formula 2 or something though. And again, that's the thing. If they wait for Kimi Antonelli, then other teams and other drivers might get themselves sorted out. And Kimi Antonelli, if he doesn't quite click, you know, maybe halfway through the season, he starts to fall off a cliff a little bit. And then it's like, oh, he's not going to win Formula 2, or he's not even going to look that competitive in Formula 2. You've got to remember, he's jumped from FRECA to Formula 2. We're now saying that in less than a season in Formula 2, he's worthy of a... Well, he actually hasn't even got behind the wheel of a Formula 2 car yet. He hasn't got behind the wheel of a Formula 2 car yet in a race. And we're saying he's worthy of a Mercedes seat. that is a big jump. A big jump. Palou had a partnership with McLaren. Yeah, he did loads of tests for them. Loads of sim sessions and bits like that. He was really good in. He did a free practice session in Austin in 2022, and kind of stole the show. Just yeah, love that I'm call it Toro Rosso. Did. No, you can't. We're going for racing balls, right? Or at least I'm going for racing balls. I've gone for that. The FIA has a new rule which you can't swear at all. Ah, huge fine. Another point. I mean, I feel like most drivers will just take that fine, if I'm honest. You've also got to remember that a lot of these drivers learn English as a second language, and they usually learn it from engineers. I think that was what Yuki Tsunoda said. He said like when he moved over to the UK and started learning English for the first time, the people that he talked to on a day-to-day basis were Red Bull engineers, which are what, like lads in their 30s, and they used to just swear at each other all the time. Like he didn't realize the severity of the swearing that he was doing. Dear. Right, I feel like we've replaced Lewis Hamilton now. We can talk about Toto as well. I mentioned the Toto heartbreak in there, but Toto's come out and talked himself now. So Toto's kind of addressed the issues that he and the team have had in trying to convince Lewis. Let's switch back over so that I can see the chat a little bit more clearly. Dun 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 dun. There we go. But that's my take on the Lewis Hamilton situation. I feel like we've nailed it down there. We've got to a point where Hamilton's going. Charles Leclerc just has to kind of deal with that. I think Charles Leclerc is now gonna have to really think about how he can overcome Lewis Hamilton and think about how, over the course of 2024 he can get a little bit of an edge. Carlos Sainz needs to decide whether or not he believes in the Audi project enough to basically give up a year of his career. And then I think the best Lewis Hamilton replacement is Alex Albon, if not Carlos Sainz. If not, I really don't like the Fernando Alonso shout. I warmed to the Fernando Alonso shout more and more. I hated it at first sight. Today I was thinking about it and I was like, maybe it's okay. Like maybe he'd be able to be all right in a Mercedes, but just not convinced. Yeah, Toto's really lost his best friend there, hasn't he? It's tough. I mean, Toto would have known. I think Toto said that he got told a few weeks ago, or a week ago or so. Lewis kind of took him out for breakfast. It's like, Toto, it's not you, it's me. It's just not working together. I know we've been together for a really long time, and I've really appreciated all the years that we've spent together, but I've met this guy called Fred. Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you. Go treat myself to a new Formula One Lego. Might do, to be fair. Don't know. The Formula the YouTube doesn't pay that well, and if it's anything like how much this Lego was, we'll see. We'll see. But thank you, Claire, for stopping by. If people don't know, Claire is like a proper day one subscriber. I think she was in the first 12 subscribers or something ridiculous. Bottas return. I don't mind Bottas return, to be fair. I don't mind Bottas return. But I think I've rambled on. I'm going to throw out then, as it is 50k, if you've got any questions, queries, things that you'd like to know about Formula One, about me, I think Hamilton's love for Mercedes slowly dwindled after Lauda. Yeah, that's true. Missing of Lauda. Didn't think about kind of including that, but yeah. Has as much chance of winning a title with Haas than Ferrari. Ooh, I don't know about that. Honest question, when did I start watching Formula One? 2000, and it was 2008, 2009. was like in and around that time. I think I watched a few races in 2008, but didn't properly follow it like all the way through. It was kind of one of those things I was just starting to get into, didn't know a lot about it, used it more of an excuse to just sort of sit in the lounge by myself. And then moved over that way. But yeah, and then 2009 was the Jenson Button year. Obviously, the Brawn season. And that was very, very exciting. Thank you so much, CLX. CLX. Clicks. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you, Antonio. Yeah, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget. I joined at a good time. It was quite nice. It was good year, the Brawn year. And then obviously I watched the Sebastian Vettel dominance that was the Red Bull era. And then yeah, kind of that's why I feel like I kind of got into it then, started watching it. I was still quite young at that point, but the most kind of impactful seasons for me were the Rosberg Hamilton battle era. I feel like I was old enough to like understand the nuance a little bit. I was old enough to understand like the racing side of things, but also, you know, the team side of things. I started like enjoying learning about aero and the cars and how they work. So yeah, it was kind of in and amongst that era where we had the Hamilton Rosberg years where I properly sort of started to get into it at that time. Hamilton is the guy from Fortnite. Started watching when you were streaming Elden Ring and did football commentary on Twitch. Yeah, we went down some avenues at the beginning. Young enough to see Massacre. I did. Yeah, I do remember that. The Brazil. I mean, I've seen it since. I think that's the thing as well. I do go back and watch kind of the races. I think race fans have like a top 100 races in Formula One, and it's updated quite regularly. So like they add on the new races as it goes. But there's some proper like classics on there. A lot of Brazils. I've watched a lot of Brazilian Grand Prix. There was the Brazilian Grand Prix. I can't remember what it was, but it was when Nico Hulkenberg was like destined for a podium, and then he just threw it all away. Threw it all away. That is a tough watch, but I've watched that race a couple of times. Can't remember what year it is though. I literally just go on the race fans website, go down like the top races since 2000 or whenever it was, and just pick one at random to watch. But because I love Brazil, I've watched the Brazilian ones a little bit more. Yeah, Button, Vettel, Lewis, Fernando, Massa, Weber. Yeah, the battle between Vettel, Weber, and Alonso in Abu Dhabi when Alonso got caught behind the Renaults and was just stuck, and then Sebastian Vettel snuck the title away. It was ridiculous. That was insane. When will I collab with Josh Rebel? I do love Josh Rebel, to be fair. I've thought about it. I do need to do more collabs in general. I've thought about getting people on for the watch along streams, but I don't know how I feel about that. Because then, like, I feel like the watch along streams work quite well because I'm invested in the race. So I can give a lot of insight. And I feel like a lot of people come to this channel during the races in particular more for the insight and the kind of statistical insight rather than kind of what I did when I went over onto the last lap, which was more just have a general chat about Formula One whilst the race was on, which is kind of the format for multi-person streams. And they never really seem to click as much, did they? Like multi-person streams. I know P1 do it, and there's two of them. But if you look at like Veloce, they did watch-alongs for a little while. They never really clicked. The last lap did watch-alongs, and now they're kind of folding. Didn't quite, I don't think, make the numbers required for the fellas to keep them on. That's just me like throwing it out there. I have no idea why the last lap is going. That would be my guess. Like the fellas, I think, have moved studios, and therefore, like, did the last lap kind of warrant moving and taking with it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It's an interesting one though. I've thought about collabs more. Obviously, I do the podcast with Taron, So we chat Formula One, and that's like me and Taryn chat generally about Formula One quite a bit anyway. So pretty much every best racing driver in existence was racing at the same time. Yeah, you got to throw in the fact that Schumacher came in for a couple of years as well. It was all good. Hayden is now in WTF1. I did see that. I haven't watched any of the WTF1 videos in a very long time. I think the oxygen from that channel was sucked out of it quite quickly, wasn't it? And yeah, everyone kind of moved over to P1. I do love chucking a P1 podcast on, especially if I'm in the car. I think that's the thing. I don't watch P1's videos, but I do listen to the podcast on Spotify quite a lot. I do just chuck it on. And I think their videos are the podcast kind of clipped out, aren't they? So it's kind of one and the same thing. 2022 was 2 years ago. Yeah, it was a long time ago, man. But yeah, I'm interested in WTF1. I don't know. I was thinking about this. And obviously, I'm nowhere near as established in this sort of scene as Hayden is. But I was kind of thinking, if WTF1 came knocking, what would I be able to offer? You know what I mean? I was like, if they came knocking. Because obviously, they had the lineup last season. And I assume all of them have just kind of fallen off. I don't really know what's happened to WTF1. Because they had like Matt and Tommy, obviously. Then Matt and Tommy left. And then they got replaced by 4 or 5 different people, I want to say. But then those 4 or 5 people must now be gone, right? If Hayden and the girl's name is completely dropped off my head. If like those 2 are taking over, I assume everyone that they've hired at the beginning of last season is no longer there. And they're just hiring like a fresh lineup for 2024. Then it makes you wonder, like, is Hayden going to be replaced in 2025? How long do these WTF1 hosts actually last? Lotus Kimi. Oh, Lotus Kimi. Lotus Kimi is my favorite Kimi, I think. I was a proper Lotus fan at that point. Like, I was a McLaren fan. I've always loved McLaren. But yeah, when the black and gold Lotus was on the grid, I did have a very soft spot for that Lotus. I worked at Lotus for a bit, actually. Hang on. Do I have... Is it behind me? I assumed it was. Oh, yeah, it's here. I have a Lotus badge, which I think is from... It's either like the hood of a Lotus or like the wheel of a Lotus. Can't remember now. But I got this when I worked at Lotus. So that's in the background too. Katie Fairman. Yeah, she's gone on. She's doing incredibly well though. She's Formula E now, right? I met her as well. I met Matt and Tommy and Katie, and I've met quite a few of the kind of Formula One people in that sphere. Thank you, Mortiz. Appreciate that. Lotus Kimi was genuine something else? Yeah. I mean, he bankrupted them. It's one thing going to a Formula One team and doing well. It's another thing doing so well that you bankrupt the team. Dear. Oh yeah, I know. I was talking to Matt about this actually, because like Matt obviously came on, so it was Tommy's channel. Tommy sold it to the race, and then the race became part of the Athletic. So it's like they sold it to the race, but then the race also got sold to the Athletic, and then when the Athletic came in, they obviously had lots of power over everything, and it feels like they lost the ability to kind of it be theirs, if you know what I mean. Like it was no longer theirs anymore. It was sold on and then sold on, and you had kind of parent company race, parent company Athletic, and by the time ideas came down or you pitched an idea and it went all the way up, it's pretty tricky. Love Lotus and McLaren, versatile. We are in the same boat. Me and you, same person. Like I feel like, you know, when people are like, oh, who would you love to see back on the Formula One grid, and like people throw out names like, oh, Andretti, I'd love them to be back. Like Lotus would be mine. If Lotus could come on for one more season, love that. Lotus stands for lots of trouble, usually serious. Oh yeah, the Lotus cars are Like, but I worked in the factory. I worked in the Lotus factory for like, it was like a month. Like, don't get me wrong. It was I was very very young. I was getting like work experience. I didn't work there. Like I didn't get a pay packet. I worked there, but not in a serious role of any kind. But it was it was wonderful. It was like a good month or so. But yeah, the cars are. I mean, it's just like like an old school factory. Like I've visited other factories since, and they're very different. Like the Lotus factory still had that feel of like an old school factory. Probably doesn't anymore actually. Now they've moved more to like electronic sports cars and supercars. Probably doesn't have that same pull. But yeah, Lotus was fun. Still pay like 8 million to Kimmy, or maybe even more than that. They definitely owe Kimmy some money. I feel like Kimmy is chill enough that he probably just let it slide, especially considering he then went to Ferrari for like big money. Went to Ferrari for big money, did Kimmy, and I feel like got away with it. Got away with losing a few millions to to Lotus to gain them back at Ferrari. Goodness me. Anyway, I should probably disappear. It's been an hour and a half. It's been an hour and a half. What? Where is that time absolutely disintegrated into? That's ridiculous. I have thought about doing this more often though. A little Friday stream. How do we feel about Friday stream? Are people available on Friday? I mean, you're here now. It's Friday now. Do I reckon Max will win every race this season? No, no, no. The law of diminishing returns. Red Bull will be... I feel like Red Bull will still win a lot of races, but there will be a few more different winners over the course of this season. Hopefully. Kind of fingers crossed. Just feel like, yeah, the Red Bull car was so good. How much better can it really get from this point? There's got to be a plateau to performance at some point. It's a bit like the 100-meter sprint, right? Like Usain Bolt. I don't know if anyone can beat that record because it's just like obscene. There's a limit. No one's ever going to run 100 meters in like 5 seconds. So there's a limit to like what is feasibly possible by the human race. And similar to like Formula One cars, with these regulations, there's only so far you can get. Thank you, Sanat, for subscribing. Appreciate that. Do I remember the Ferrari F14? Only car in history to do both understeer and oversteer. Yeah, Ferrari had some weird years, didn't they? They kind of chased performance to an excessive level, and I think that that's the difference. You think about Christian Horner and Toto Wolff, the fact that they've been there for so long. Like Christian Horner is the longest standing team principal. Then Toto Wolff just behind that. And then everyone else is pretty new. Like, what is it? Vasseur, Crack, they're all like second year in terms of their teams. Gunther's now gone. And you're looking at Franz Tost is now gone. Like every other team principal, other than those two, is very new to the team principal role. Not necessarily Formula One. A lot of them have been in Formula One for ages. But at least they're new to like being a team principal. Vowles is in his second year. Yeah, literally everyone. Everyone's kind of in their first, second year, apart from Toto and Christian, right? The sweatshirt. Thank you, Maria. Again, I cannot take any credit for this. It is beautiful. It's one of my favorites. I'll give you like a full. Bada bing, bada boom. MP4/4. 1988. A beautiful year. A vintage year. Where did this go? This Lotus badge went somewhere here, maybe. But yeah, that's from the Lotus factory. There you go. That was a good little story. Kimi Bankrock closest to bring in Pastor Maldonado. Hey, Pastor Maldonado is a race winner. Don't you talk smack about Pastor Maldonado here. Dear. Anyway, any other questions, queries? It's Friday then. Saturday, Sunday. What? A-level economics. What? What did I miss? Has it been an hour and a half? Here in the first second. Has disappeared very, very quickly. I do feel like we could do more of this though. Friday's a bit of a weird one. Actually, Friday's good for me now. What you don't know is, like, behind the scenes, I've got a brand new job over the course of the winter break. So, yeah, I got a new role, new job. Marlboro sticker on the car. There you go. There's the thinking. Yeah, I got a brand new actual job. But some people think that I do this full time, which I think is mad, first and foremost, because I only upload, like, very sporadically. You know, you look at, like, Laws, for instance, who does it full time. He uploads every day. Or Tomo, who does it full time. He uploads basically every day as well. Like, he's either doing a live stream or, like, uploading a video or doing something pretty much every day. I'm very sporadic in terms of my uploads, in my opinion. So I do not do this full time. Not even close to doing this full time. But I do enjoy this very much. What was I going on? Oh, if I can, because of my new job, I finish earlier on a Friday. So I have thought about doing some Friday streams more often throughout the season. Although we're going to have qualifyings on Fridays. We're going to have sprint races on Fridays. We're going to have races on Saturdays this season. So it's going to be all a little bit up in the air. But we'll see what we can do. They're making a Lego McLaren MP4. Oh, if that better be true. That really better be true. Vals and Stella are doing pretty well, considering. Oh, yeah, they're doing amazingly. Vals, I rate so highly. So highly. I rate him massively. But I feel like, yeah. Option to bring back any type of engine to Formula 1, what would it be? Everyone goes V10, don't they? Everyone just says, bring back V10. I like the fact that we're moving towards a modern iteration. Like, I understand why Formula 1 are doing this. And, like, it's easy to get angry about it. It's easy to say, oh, the cars don't sound as good. But you've got to move with the times. You've got to get to the point where it's just, like, keeping up with everything else. Where did I get this light? The Singapore light. There is a link in the description to Formula Neon, and you can get 10% off if you use my code, because they, lovely people at Formula Neon, set me up with this so that I could have it in the background. I need something like here, don't I? I got a print of the McLaren livery for the Triple Crown, but it's in the other room. I thought about putting it in the background. It couldn't quite find a spot for it. Anyway, I'm going to disappear because I've rambled on for over an hour and a half now. We've done Haas. We've done Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari. We've talked every single avenue. Had a lovely little time with each of us. Thank you, Georgia, for subscribing. Appreciate that massively. Just as we're about to come to an end. If you are new, subscribe. It's well worth it. Most people agree. Some people unsubscribe eventually. But there you are, you know. Actually gave a really good answer. Thank you. I try. I think about things sometimes. If I could replace one race for any race, I would like Malaysia back on the calendar. I do like Malaysia. I'll throw that on there. But yeah, that's just me. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe. Thank you all for joining me. Quick link to adverts. Just in the description. Click any of the links in the description. You know what? If you want to do me a massive favor, even if you've seen a video before, just go down to the description, click a link. You can mute the tab, but just let the video play all the way to the end. And just get that extra view on there. Get that extra 100% view on a video. That's all I really want. Nah, I just appreciate you guys stopping by and being part of the team. And I cannot wait for the first race of the season. Can't believe the first race of the season is this month. right? We're in Bahrain at the end of this month. And we're going to be back live streaming qualifying, sprint races, 24 times this year. Cannot wait for it. Thank you again